Today, I will be discussing attachment theory and looking at the history, main psychological framework, and overall development of attachment theory. There's always been this interest surrounding the question, what shapes our ability to trust and respond to other people? To answer that question, we have to look at the history of attachment theory. Before this theory existed, many psychologists believed that babies bonded with their mothers mainly through satisfaction of biological needs, such as food and care. In early psychology, love and comfort weren't seen as scientific ideas. To understand attachment theory, we must review the work of John Bowlby, who is typically credited as the father of attachment theory, despite the fact that he frequently worked with Mary Ainsworth, but we'll address her findings in a moment. Now, some brief background on John Bowlby. He studied psychology and preclinical science at Trinity College in Cambridge. After Cambridge, he worked with maladjusted and delinquent children until he enrolled at University College Hospital in London. Following medical school, he trained in adult psychiatry at the Maudsley Hospital. In 1963, at age 30, he qualified as a psychoanalyst. During the first 6 months of World War II, Bowlby worked at the London Child Guidance Clinic in Canonbury as a physician, where he began working on his first published work, 44 Juvenile Thieves, which was ultimately published in 1944. In his study, he looked at children who had been separated from their mothers for long periods in early life. Many of these children showed emotional issues like trouble forming relationships or feeling empathy. Bowlby linked these issues to what he called affectionless psychopathy, which he believed resulted from early long-term separation and emotional neglect. Another work of his, A Secure Base, explains that when a child feels safe, they explore the world. When they're scared, they return to the caregiver for comfort. He called this the secure base, and it is a natural survival system. Now, let's look at Mary Ainsworth. Mary Ainsworth was an American-Canadian developmental psychologist who earned her master's degree in 1936, and her PhD was granted in 1939 from the University of Toronto. After graduation, she stayed at the University of Toronto as a teacher before joining the Canadian Women's Army's Corps in 1942. After returning from the war, she married Leonard Ainsworth, who she ended up divorcing, and they moved to London, where she had the opportunity to meet and work with many influential psychologists, including John Bowlby. Ainsworth's work, in which she studied families in both Uganda and America, led her to conclude that there were very different patterns in how infants reacted to stress and separation. To measure this, Ainsworth created something called the strain situation. It's a short but structured observation where a baby experiences a few quick separations and reunions with their caregiver, and the key moments here are the reunions and observing how the baby responds when the caregiver returns. Through this, Ainsworth discovered three main patterns in attachment. Secure babies get upset when the caregiver leaves, but are easily comforted when they return. Avoidant babies didn't show much distress and ignored their caregivers when they came back. And ambivalent babies are upset by separation but act unsure or clingy during reunion. Her research showed that these patterns weren't random. They were closely linked to how well the caregiver noticed, understood, and responded to the baby's needs. When caregivers were consistent and warm, babies were more likely to form secure attachments. When care was unpredictable or less responsive, babies showed insecure patterns. The work of Ainsworth was significant and gave attachment theory real scientific evidence that had previously been lacked. It showed that early relationships could be observed, measured, and connected to a child's emotional development. Now, when discussing attachment theory, it is important to acknowledge the very famous and controversial study done by Harry Harlow. In his 1950s study, Harlow tested whether babies bonded with their mothers primarily because of food and biological factors, as mentioned previously, or because of comfort and security. To do this, he used monkeys, but he built them two kinds of mother figures, one that was made of soft cloth and one that was made of wire. Sometimes the wire mother had the milk bottle and sometimes the cloth mother did. But during most of the experiment, the infant monkeys spent more time clinging to the cloth mother. In fact, they typically only went to the wire mother when they needed food and then went right back to the cloth one. Harlow's research also showed how important comfort was in moments of fear. When researchers introduced factors that could raise fear, the monkeys immediately ran to the cloth mother for comfort and safety. Even when the wire mother provided food, she did not give the little baby monkeys the sense of security they needed. These findings challenged previous ideas that suggested feeding is the driving factor that creates love in a bond. Harlow's work actually supported Bowlby's belief that attachment is rooted in comfort, protection, and emotional security, and his study made it clear that love is not just about survival, it is about safety as well. Of course, Harlow's experiment is widely considered unethical today. The monkeys experienced stress and isolation, and the standards for animal research have changed a lot since then. Another thing to note is that while the findings are helpful, monkeys are not perfect predictors of human behavior. They just give us clues about how important comfort and security might be during early development. Now, getting into some of the more modern research that has been done, we can see continuations of attachment theory research in the article titled Contributions of Attachment Theory in Research, a Framework for Future Research, Translation, and Policy. According to the author and researchers, secure attachments help shape a child's stress response, emotional regulation, and even later relationships. Those who feel supported learn a kind of secure base script, meaning that they expect that when they're upset, someone will help them and things will be okay. Researchers also found that attachment patterns are influenced by many factors, not just parental love alone. There's something called a transmission gap, which means a parent's attachment style doesn't fully explain how their children develop theirs. The results of this research remind us that attachment is complex and it grows from a mixture of caregiving, biology, and life experience. Today, attachment theory is used all across psychology and even outside of it. Counselors and therapists use it to understand how people form relationships and how early experiences shape communication and emotional coping. Attachment theory continues to be an important and relevant part of psychology today. The works of Bowlby, Ainsworth, and Harlow all show how deep early childhood experiences and caregiving shape our emotions and behavior. Understanding attachment helps us to understand ourselves, the ways in which we love, connect with others, and how we cope.